generation is also used to the fact that if it is the written word, तो हम follow करते हैं. अगर if you're walking down the road and somebody says मेरा OTP आपके पास है, आप बोलेंगे कि देखिए वो रास्ता है, आप निकल जाएंगे. But आपको लिखित में आया कि मेरा OTP है, so immediately you imagine that it's a verified thing, and it becomes very problematic. It's just the number of upsurges that we are seeing. It's come to a point where after a point, there are people who are getting into primary bank accounts not being attached to a card and things, saying we'll go back to the ways that it was done because it's all OTP based, and OTP कहीं से भी आप किसी से भी मांग लेते हैं. मैं फोन करूं आपको suddenly बोलूं अच्छा there's an OTP that has come, would you give it? But it's so easy to be able to track everything down because data is available, it's all interconnected, and it's. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Somebody told me send something on Facebook. मैंने कहा मैं तो Facebook, Instagram वगैरह में I've not even been for the last 5 years. I'm so nervous of all this. I do zero online transactions except through the credit card for something very, very important. Otherwise, no. I am very nervous about all these things.
See, unless hygiene checks can be maintained, ma'am, the thing is that if one is not doing an audit very regularly, and by an audit, it basically means that you change your password, you change your codes, passcodes very regularly, including for that of your Wi-Fi. It's absolutely imperative that don't get one because there's a system to it.
Kiranji, have you joined? Can we start? Komal, has Kiranji joined?
She has. I just saw her login.
So, can I start? Can I please start with the brief?
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to let you know which are the webinars that are coming up for the rest of the month. 12th August, we have Flourishing Through the Fire. This is an Independence Day special with Wing Commander retired Anupma Joshi and IG Telangana Abhilasha Bhisht. The next one we have is on 18th August, Concept of Indianness Through Literature and Art. This is a curious lecture of international acclaim by retired Joint Commissioner, Crime Branch, Delhi Police, Brijesh Singh. The third one is on 22nd August, Women in Leadership, Building a New Normal by Neha Joshi. And 26th August, we have The Profound Writer, A Curtain Raiser with Mona Verma. Again, good afternoon, everyone. I, Gauri Suri, Secretary of Law Uttarakhand Chapter, would like to welcome you all to our webinar session on cyber security and the pandemic era. Under the leadership of our chairperson, Ms. Kiran Bhattacharya. I would like to give a warm welcome to all our members of the Flow Community Pan-India, all past presidents Pan-India, governing body members and other chapters. I would also like to welcome Komal Batra, our Senior Vice Chairperson, Dr. Neha Sharma, Vice Chairperson, Ruchi Jain, our Treasurer, Tripti Bahel, our Joint Secretary, and Charu Chauhan, Joint Treasurer. Now I would like to request our Chairperson, Ms. Kiran, to address the viewers. Kiranji, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible, Gauri? Am I? Because I'm having a problem with my device. Anyways.
No, you're audible.
A very warm welcome to each one of you. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome all of you. In this new normal, COVID-19 is not the only risk. With the ability to quickly and exponentially disrupt the way we live, the crisis shows that the world is far more prone to disturbance by pandemic and cyber attacks. And a cyber pandemic is probably as inevitable as a future disease pandemic. The time to start thinking about the responses to start that process it's important to examine the lesson of COVID-19 pandemic and use them to prepare for a future global cyber attacks. Our today's webinar is on cybersecurity and the pandemic era, and our today's speaker is Ms. Talish Ray. Talish Ray is one of founder partners of TRS Law Offices as an alumni of La Martiniere Girls College and the Lady Shri Ram College. She got her degree in law from Delhi University. She has appeared before the Supreme Court of India as well as the various high courts and tribunals across the country. Her work includes complex commercial litigation, corporate structuring, general advisory, and policy work. She continues to serve as an associate with the Faculty of Law, University of Tasmania, the University of Engineering, and Management gave her an Award of Excellence for her work in corporate law in 2019. She was a delegate for Australian India Youth Dialogue in 2015 and was a part of this bilateral diplomacy dialogue steering committee till 2019. She spearheads the very acclaimed Girls Got to Know, which has, in a short span of time, became a leading resource for early stage intervention for young girls and women on their social and legal rights. It was awarded the Woman of Stream Award by Newsex in 2019 for its pioneering role. In her spare time, she conducts heritage walks around the city of Delhi under the banner of Talish Ka Tehlnama. The walks has been extensively covered by the media, one of which referred to her as the people's historian. She is currently working on a piece about the textile tradition of Pune for the Pune Cultural Mapping Project by Shape India. A very warm welcome to you, Talish. And now I will hand it over to our day chair, Ms. Trishla Malik, who is also a chief coordinator for our law committee of Law Uttarakhand. Over to you, Trishla.
Thank you, Kiran ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
First of all, very warm welcome, everyone. I would like to thank Kiran ma'am and our respected OB for reappointing me as the chief legal. This is a very close to my heart. Actually, legal is something I never wanted to do in life. I always wanted to pursue my career in sports. People know me as a shooter, and now they know me as a lawyer. I'm a qualified corporate lawyer, but my aim is to deliver justice to the needy. I feel we are into a materialistic world and we deliver to the materialism. But until and unless our humanity is at peace and they are enjoying their life with their full rights and liberties, I think we are not capable to call ourselves lawyers. Our journey is incomplete without them. So with this concept in mind, I opened my own law firm. It's known as Amicus Legal Consultancy, and we deal in various sort of laws in pan-India. So I'd like to hand over to Talish ma'am. Please continue with this topic. Thank you, everyone.
Madam Chairperson and everybody else from FICCI Flow Uttarakhand, thank you for having me over. Thank you for such a warm welcome. It's always such a pleasure to be able to interact with your membership, especially because a lot of you are very dynamic women with their own standing and ideas about how to move the world in a better direction. So we are actually here today to discuss about cybersecurity in the COVID-19 era. Now, as all of you are aware, both as people who are citizens of a society, as those that are leading their organizations or working in organizations, is the fact that COVID sort of took us by surprise. I mean, where we were in February looking at what Holi is going to be about, and the next thing you knew was that there was a complete lockdown, which led to a situation which was all about work from home, and suddenly internet connectivity became very important. In fact, I remember seeing this entire diagram about Maslow, which said that more important than housing, shelter, food actually became your Wi-Fi connectivity. And it really did lead into something which has been predicted for a long time by Bill Gates, where he said the world would be divided by those that can access knowledge and those that can't access knowledge. So therefore, from the haves and the have-nots, it's moved on to those that are a part of the knowledge economy and those that are not a part of knowing the things. Now, in that, what happened also was a complete surge that took place in terms of cybercrime. Now, when we are looking at cybercrime, it's very interesting because I was looking up last week the statistics that are there for cybercrime where India is concerned, and it's not surprisingly we are amongst one of the top 5 nations in terms of the hits that we've taken in terms of cybersecurity. So we've had all manners of cybercrime that has taken place, whether it is for somebody who has gone on OLX, cyber criminals that went on OLX and put on sale the Statue of Unity, saying that they're raising money for the state of Gujarat to fight COVID-19, or it was the various fake PM care funds that came up, or even where the bank EMI moratorium schemes that were taking place, the various sites that came up for that. These are just some of the examples. I'm not even talking about the regular things which involve phishing, which involve what is known as the stealing of data or stealing of somebody's identity, or what is very common in today's day and age, which is Zoom bombing, which is basically that people may be having a private meeting over a sort of operation like Zoom, and you'd have somebody else walk into the room and interrupt that meeting. And these are the kind of things that have taken place. But I think what is important to understand in the first one, what I'm going to do is that I will start by sharing a slide so that everybody sort of has something to keep themselves in terms of looking at. Are you being able to see my slides? Is everyone able to see that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So when we are looking at something like cybercrime, we first need to understand as to what is it that when we talk about the criminality in terms of the cyberspace, what exactly is a cybercrime? And then I'm going to come into what is right to privacy. When we're talking about cybercrime, I think it's very important for us to remember that cybercrime can be defined very simply as basically any crime that takes place through a computer, over the internet, and has the potential to take away from a person or an organization something that belongs to them. Now, that whether it is money, whether it's material, whether it's their identity, whether it's their privacy, or as for that matter, even source codes and other things. So it can range over basically any crime that takes place over the internet gets defined as cybercrime. Now, the examples of that could be anything from being hit by a virus, which is that your systems don't stop working because there's a virus attack that has come in, or it could be somebody stalking you over your online social media presence, or issuing threats over social media presence. It could be a phishing attack. A phishing attack is basically when you are forced to enter into a transaction thinking that you are doing it with a particular organization, but it turns out that that's basically false. Something that has happened quite a bit with bank accounts, which something that happened, a phishing attack is something that happened, for example, with PM Cares Fund. Or it could just be a fake or a bogus e-commerce site that could have been set up, which sort of steals your data, gets into things, and allows them to track all that you are doing without you even realizing it. Now, one of the bigger parts of the problem that happens with cybercrime is that we are not aware about a fundamental right that was granted to us by the Supreme Court, which is the right to privacy. Now, right to privacy is perhaps one of the newest rights that has come about in terms of a constitutional right, and it was derived from Article 14, which is right to equality, Article 19, which is right to employment, and Article 21, which is right to life. Now, what happens is that all these 3 rights were read together, and it said that every person has a right to privacy, wherein they are protected and their information is treated as something that is inalienable from them. So, for example, it is my privacy that I'm sitting here right now, and unless I consent to the fact that I'd like somebody to know exactly what I'm doing at this point in time, they have no right to look into it. Now, the problematic part about the right to privacy is that in this age of information technology that we're living in, data becomes very important. In fact, some have gone so far as to claim that data is the new oil. The more data that you have, the more money you can make. Just to give you as an example, if you think that that's a concept that becomes problematic, remember that when you go on a social media, whether it's an Instagram, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Facebook, the data that you provide those companies is the data that this company sells to another company, and therefore enables itself to make money through either revenues through marketing or very targeted marketing that's there. So in as much the right to privacy is something that can only be given away. My privacy belongs to me unless I choose to give it away. That's why you have a whole bunch of, every time you have to sign up on some site, you will often come across terms and conditions which say, I agree. And it's always a very good idea to read it, because that's where you would probably get a hang of what is it that they're going to take away from you in terms of information. But coming back to the cyberspace, I think it's important to remember that for us, when we look at information technology, we are actually governed by the Information Technology Act of 2000, which was passed in 2000, which was there as a means to protect all the electronic transfers that has taken place. Now, there have been a fair bit of rules that have come around information technology, but what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes is that I'd like to take you through some of the relevant sections that are there. Now, in terms of Information Technology Act, the first is Section 2NB, which defines cybersecurity. And cybersecurity becomes important because when we're talking about cybersecurity and how it's being harmed, the first thing we need to do is we need to understand what is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity basically is about protecting your information, but it's also about protecting your computer resources, your communication device, which is basically either your phone or your laptop, from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction. Now, all of these, that basically means that anybody who gets into any of your devices or any of the ecosystems over the internet that you use would come under cybersecurity. And basically, there are 5 essential elements that have been put. One is that you should protect your information, and that's where right to privacy comes in. It says that including your data, your message, your text, your sound, your codes, computer programs, all of that. It is also about protecting the devices that you have. So one is information, the other is device from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or information. And actually, that's the beauty of the act, because if you consider, either information that you have over internet or the device by which you are accessing it, which might be a desktop, it may be a laptop, it may be a computer screen, it may be a iPad. Anything that might give unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, or modification of information would come under the breach of cybersecurity. And that's where it becomes important to also look at what is the legislative framework. Now, in terms of the legislative framework, basically what is covered under for a person or an organization is under Section 43 and 66. Section 43 and 43A are very exhaustive. I'm just going to take you through that. But Section 66 is what provides the punishment that is there for any sort of breach that may take place of a crime that has been described under Section 43. Okay. And basically what Section 43 is aiming to do is to provide, penalize as well as provide compensation for anybody who has been affected by it. So, let's start looking at what Section 43 says. Section 43 says that in case there is a damage to computer system by a person without permission of the owner, or any other person who has gotten into the computer system or network or access via either downloads or introduces anything that contaminates the computer system or damages the computer system or disrupts it or denies access to another person, basically anyone getting into the system throughout any which way, whether there is any change that is made which is unauthorized, whether it destroys, deletes or alters any information, steals, conceals, alters, causes any person to steal, all of that comes under Section 43. So basically, Section 43 becomes one of the widest sections that we have in terms of taking away what is within your computer system. And again, go back, it's all devices. When it talks about computer systems, it also talks about virus attacks actually, because virus attacks can be very paralyzing. I mean, especially for organizations that are run in today's day and age, where it is basically if you're connected on to your device is how you're connected to the world. So when we're looking at that, it also describes various kinds of damages that are there. So it says that these are the kind of damages that need to take place, which is to say that it has to be destroyed, it has to be altered, deleted, modified, rearranged, or even your source code going. But what is important is that there is compensation that is already there. In terms of the fact that if there is a body corporate which has your personal data, so for example, my bank has my personal data, okay, and in case they are negligent with my information or personal data, which could be, typically when we open a bank account, we are asked things like where were you born, what's your mother's maiden name, all of those are my personal data. It could also be data about where all I have been spending the money of the bank, how much money do I have to start with, what are the funds and schemes that I invest in. Now, all of that data could be there within the bank, or it could also be there at other places. It could be there with Amazon, it could be there with Facebook. Now that body corporate actually has a liability or a responsibility to ensure that they keep my data safe. In case they don't keep it safe, then they are bound to compensate me for it. So that's how 43 comes in. So 43 actually deals with first any person whom we may not know about, but it also deals with body corporates that are taking care of our information. This also becomes relevant because 43A puts us at some sort of parity with what is known as the GDPR rules, which is the privacy rules that come in from EU that are very important. You will see that companies that have a presence outside of India follow the GDPR rule because that's the norm in many cases. Now, Section 66 actually deals with computer-related offense. Now, under 66, it's very clear that if there is any breach that has taken place under 48, then under 66, as long as it is established that the person has done it dishonestly or fraudulently, then they can be punishable for an imprisonment of a term up to 3 years or a fine that may extend to 5 lakhs or both. Now, because it is a 3-year thing, it also becomes somewhere where it is a fairly strict penalty when you are looking at in terms of breach of data. When we're looking at 66, we also see that in terms of 43, we are getting compensation for failure to protect data. Now, all of this is there, but what is important to keep in mind is where it comes down to Section 66B. Okay, and this is where it actually starts covering. If you look at B, C, D, E, you start covering the various kinds of cyber threats that are actually existent. So it becomes important because if you look at 66B, it talks about anybody receiving stolen computer resources or communication devices. Okay, then 66C is about identity theft, which is basically that, whatever is your identity, whether it is your password, whether it is your electronic signature, any other unique identification, and somebody uses it fraudulently or dishonestly, that again comes under 66.3. Then 66D is about using that and impersonating somebody else. So suppose I was to get Trishala's ID, and I log into a meeting pretending to be her without putting on my video, I'd actually come under 66D because I'm impersonating using her, her code or privacy in that sense. Then there is 66E, which talks about violation of privacy. Now, in terms of violation of privacy, basically, when you transmit an image of a private area of any person without his or her consent, without the and circumstances violating the privacy of the person, again, you can be punished. So this is here where, your identity thefts are taken care of. Then 66F actually deals with cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism is where there is a group of people that comes together to attack a certain thing in order to bring down mechanisms of state. Now, this has been known to be done where you have had sites that belong to the government that have been hacked that are there. So that's where it is. 67 then comes in about obscene material. Now, one of the things that is not known to a lot of people is that pornography in India is effectively banned. right? So you do get a lot of, messages which might be pornographic in nature, but those get hit by Section 67 because if you have, published or transmitted any material which would be sexually explicit in electronic form, then you are likely to be punished under 67B. It's not reported very often, but it can be. This is a section that is used when you have, people's identities. You have morphing of photographs, as it's called, right? Somebody's photo is taken and morphed over a lewd, explicit image and then circulated on the internet. That's typically what comes under 67 there. Then there is 71, which is misrepresentation that can take place. Now, misrepresentation can be of various kinds. Now, that misrepresentation could be where you have a website which is, impersonating another website. For example, somebody just opens up a Wikiflow website or a social media site which has not been verified. It could also be, basically a breach of confidentiality and privacy under 72. There's also punishment that has been put in, and then there is of course publication for fraudulent purposes. Again, it's all about how much the person suffered due to somebody's deficiency and fraud that has taken place. Now, in the midst of while the coronavirus thing was on, fairly early it was realized by various state agencies that there is a cybercrime threat. It didn't take too much for them to get down. The first of the few that was issued out was actually by the Delhi police. And the Delhi police advisory was about the fraudulent scheme that would take place. They were very clear. They said, in case there is a website which is selling something, in case there is a telephone call for coronavirus asking you to either give an OTP or pay some money or head for a particular hospital or pay this kind of money and be protected against it, or pay a very small nominal sum and you'd be insured against corona, or there's even cures of corona, by the way, were covered under this. And then they said that, you have to be very, very careful about phishing sites, which is what they were fairly aware because PM CARES Fund came in at that point in time. And it is about how, those sites could actually make people part with money, because a lot of people did not realize that it was a fraud PM CARES site. As well as that, they also issued out advisory in terms of what do you do under such circumstances. And they said that the first thing that you have to do is educate yourself. You have to be aware that when you are handling something with the internet, you have to be aware about the protocols. Now, what are the protocols? Change your password very frequently. Ensure that your Wi-Fi security is very safe. Ensure that at all points in time, you are keeping a tab of what needs to be sort of kept prevented. So it can't just be, have a password which is fairly complicated. You have websites which actually allow you to generate passwords that can be complicated, not sharing passwords with somebody else. Now, in that, they also were very, very aware, about the fact that this is something where there's going to be data theft as well. And as I explained to you, data theft is basically when you take somebody's data and use it pretending to be that person, or use it for any other method. Now, both of these came in. There was also an advisory, incidentally, that came out from the PMO. This was not a written advisory. This was basically an advisory that came in from, a person attached to the PM's office. And basically what it said was that, have a look at what the Ministry of Defense is saying, because what the Ministry of Defense, through its advisories, and there are multiple advisories that the Cert, which is a body, CERT, and the Ministry of Defense have brought about, talking about highlighting the various vulnerabilities that are there in systems like Google Chrome, in Adobe products, in Photoshop, in Microsoft, in Mozilla, in Apple iOS, in Zoom, in Microsoft Windows, in DNS servers, all of this. Now, this was, of course, done to start with, keeping in mind the ongoing tension that was there with China. But very importantly, what was there was the fact that, these advisories are still there and they can be looked up if you go to the website. I'm happy to share. So this is Cert, which is the nodal agency. Now, if you go to Cert, you have a particular section in Cert/IN, which talks about advisories. Each one of them in very detail will give you what the vulnerabilities are and how those vulnerabilities can be, hooked into, and how do you sort of avoid that. So it has about the defects of software. So Cert is something that you should, on a normal practice, if you are an internet user, please keep looking up Cert advisories. It's a very good body. It's a government body that was formed under the IT Act. So, it comes up with the latest advisories that are there specifically for India. It also tells you about the various scams that are taking place. And it becomes very important because it becomes a one-stop shop to be able to keep track of something. I'm going to start with, before we open the house in that sense for questions about preventive measures. I mean, I think we'd all agree that prevention becomes better than cure. Okay. So the first is that if you have any program, software or data, which is to say that you have an operating system, you have any data that is there, please ensure that that is not a pirated edition. When you have pirated editions of things, you're actually encouraging viruses to come in because they're often written onto the code of it. In case you are yourself dealing with software, then ensure that you have a license agreement with your customer and users. Be very aware of phishing. What do I mean by phishing? Phishing is basically when somebody pretends to be something else and wants you to partake money in return for something that they may be offering. So normally that's what we say in terms of internet technology laws, that if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it will be a duck. Right? So if you have something that is looking too good to be true, it's always a good idea to pick up a phone and find out from that organization rather than initially just going in. And this becomes problematic because what happens is, a lot of the times you are on social media, you suddenly see somebody who's selling something which you know that right across your house, you are likely to get that for 3x the value. Ask yourself, why would they be selling it cheaper? And if they're selling it cheaper, is it a phishing website? The next most important thing, we all have antiviruses, which is a software, and we allow it to expire. Because who wants to spend that 2,000 rupees annually? Please don't do that. Please ensure that you have a very good antivirus. And in that antivirus, you also have a good firewall. You see, what happens in an internet connection is that people are constantly trying to dip into your system to be able to steal things. A firewall is basically like a good security wall around which does not allow people to access your system. The other very important thing is that, we go on to web, we are told that everything is available free. Obviously, that is not going to be true for a very long time. If it is available freely, if it is pirated, please ensure that you do not download something if it is not secure. Now, how do you recognize the difference between secure and non-secure? It's fairly simple. You will see that whenever you type something, it comes up as HTTP. Now, in case it's HTTP, then it's not secure. If it is HTTPS, the S is very important because the S in the address denotes whether it is secure or insecure. And if it's not secure, it's a good idea not to go, which includes things like, you have sites which will keep, this is especially true for movies, it's especially true for programs that are there. People don't want to pay for it. They download it from various sites that are there. Typically, these are Tor networks that are there because you think that it's just simpler and cheaper. It's not a good idea to do that because again, you have a lot of viruses that are getting downloaded into the system and you don't know what they're going to be transmitting forward. The other thing that I want to tell you is that do not allow anyone to share or copy either data or software or have access to your email and other things. It's important that, your devices be treated with the kind of respect that's needed. So a lot of the times I see that things like phones become public property, right? They're lying in your office, everybody has access to it. That is something where it becomes very, very problematic and it cannot be allowed because you see, you have a lot of data. It's very easy to figure out all that you need to do in terms of if there's somebody's phone or somebody's computer, you often are able to figure out what passwords are, where you can get in, send emails. So one of the very popular phishing exercises that used to be there, which is actually which came back again. This was there in 2008, 2009. You would get an email from one of your relatives, typically a distant relative, saying, "I'm stranded in Spain and I don't have any money and I can't speak. Can you send money to this number?" We saw an immediate, uptake on this after COVID-19 hit. So there's a specific. I know that this is a professor who was teaching in Mumbai, whose Facebook page was, replicated, because we all have some pictures that are public. It was replicated. A friend request was sent to all the people. Some of them accepted it, and they immediately got a message saying, "I'm stuck. I have COVID. I have no money. This is the Paytm account. Please transfer money." You'd be surprised, because most of them were her students. They didn't actually end up transferring. So when they did a calculation, it came out that something like, in a span of about the 45 minutes that this lady discovered this breach of privacy and reported it to Facebook and got the profile down, the person who had been impersonating ended up making something like 25,000 rupees. And that's how it works. And these phishing operations are on all the time. So be very careful about who you are allowing within your friend group, who follows you within Instagram, what your social media is like, what are you posting in terms of your WhatsApp statuses and other things. Because remember that once information is there in the public domain, it can be used in very, very many methods. Steps to be taken in case you are a cyber victim. Okay. The first, if it is ongoing, please disconnect immediately. So if I know that there is a breach that's taking place of my system, the first thing I do is I shut down the system completely. Okay. Now this is if there's a data breach taking place. Now, in case there is cyberbullying or cyber stalking that's happening, then it becomes a little more crucial. A lot of the times, I think people try and reason out with either the bully or the stalker. I don't think that that's likely to work. What is more important is take snapshots of that and immediately report it to the cops. It's important that you do that, right? Now, in terms of phishing attacks, it's fairly simple. Because you have transferred a small sum of money, and along with that, you have also given away some of your data. Immediately call up your bank and freeze anything that you may have on that account. Whether it's credit card, whether it's debit card, whether it's checkbook, just freeze it all together and tell the bank that you have been subjected to a phishing attack, so that they are able to regenerate. They also have their mechanisms that are there. In terms of reporting it, it's actually fairly simple. Most cyber cells have an email account. Just email the details. And then in terms of the detail, you have to give details about yourself. You have to give details about the crime that has taken place. You have to give details about how it has taken place, and attach snapshots. Because you see, a lot of the times data is not generated, but you will have snapshots that are there. Ensure that you do put that in. It's also important that, when you are snapshotting things, then you need to be able to tell them what your device IP is. And the device IP is fairly easy to find out. Just Google it. It will show you what the device IP is. And that needs to be given to the cops. It's actually important because a lot of the times, when you have either cyber violence, which is cyber stalking, or cyber bullying, or you have phishing that takes place, you're often prone to repeat attacks. Okay. In terms of taking preventive measures, I think what should be done is that you should have a habit of please change your password every 2 weeks, if not more. Ensure that you don't share your password. Ensure that everything around you, whether it's your Wi-Fi, whether it's your computer, all of that have a strong password. Now, a strong password is something which has alpha, numeric, it has symbols, and it has both capital and small letters. So it should be complicated to start with. Along with that, I think what is important to do as an audit is your firewalls and your viruses. The third is ensure that any social media that you are on, that is a locked profile, and that you do not use the social media. I mean, social media is an extension of your social life. Just like you are not likely to sit down and chat or be friendly to somebody that you don't know, there is no business to allow them on your social media as well. Because there are various kinds of social media, and very often social media is the first way that they use to fish out information. For example, if you go on my social media, you figure out, well, I like dogs, so it's likely that I'm more likely to contribute if there's an organization that comes in stating that I'd like certain donation for dogs that are hungry during the lockdown. So it's important that we start respecting our privacy, because a lot of the times we have grown up in a society where privacy itself was, we're very community oriented. Privacy is not a question that bothers Indians very much. it is more likely that, you meet perfect strangers and we talk about everything because we are community oriented. But that given there's a change in terms of that, because earlier it was very easy to track people within a community. Today it's not. Today, with the internet, the world is literally on your fingertips. So it's difficult to track how your information is going, and therefore it needs to be, put down. So it's important that at all points in time you do have your cyber cell number on your telephone, and you do have the cyber cell email account immediately there for you to be able to use that. Right. So this is pretty much as I had to talk, but I do believe that there are quite a few questions that are there. Let me just stop the screen sharing. Has that stopped? The screen share? Yes, it has. So shall we take up the questions one by one?
Komal, will you be doing the question answers, please?
Good evening, Kalish. That was quite intense. So many of us did not know so many things. So our first question here is by Dr. Nirja. She wishes to know, how do we identify that our phone has been hacked? Because these days we are doing a lot of classes and other things on the phone due to the lockdown, and we are open and exposed to so much interaction. So how do we really get to know if our phone has been hacked?
Okay, so there's no way of knowing that your phone has been hacked, but there's a hygiene method for the phone, which is that back up all the data that you have. And what is the data that you typically have on your phone is typically your phone diary. Back up your phone diary, reset the phone onto factory settings. The moment you do that, whatever system that might be there which you may feel might be hacking your system would immediately be deleted out, because it goes back to factory settings. And the moment it comes back to factory settings, come back on, reload your contact diary, and you can of course reload whatever are the other apps that you need, whether it is Zoom or it's a Cisco or a WebEx or whatever, and you're pretty sorted. And what you should do is try and do this as frequently as possible. So basically, in for a phone, it is very difficult for you as a lay person to make out if it's hacked or not, because there are softwares which allow you to do that. But again, you have to invest in that. So the simplest method is back your phone data, which is important for you, reset onto factory settings. All phones have that, and your phone would be clean and good to go.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Our next question is from Miss Bindu Shastri. This question comes from the YouTube viewers. How do we report a cybercrime? What are the things that we should be prepared with beforehand, so that just in case we need to report it?
Yeah.
What should be the process for it?
Okay. So for cybercrime to be reported, I think the first thing that you need to do is that in case there's a crime that has taken place, please take snapshots. Okay. Take snapshots, or if that is not available, take a phone and click a photo. If you don't know how to snapshot it, just click a photo. Keep that data with you. Every district in India has a cybersecurity cell. Please write an email to them with this data. Now, what you need to put in the email is who are you, your identity, your address, the nature of the cybercrime that has taken place with you. Describe in detail what all has happened. And after you have given the description of it, put down the email ID and address by which you can be reached and email that to them. For being doubly secure, take a printout of that and also go and register it in the local police as a police complaint. Right? So those are the two methods by which you report it. So either the cybersecurity cell or the police station. I would recommend that both should be done. Both of them are to be done in that sense. But before you do all of this, I would say that the moment it has taken place, you should also involve the agencies. Now, in case there's a cybercrime that involves phishing, call up your bank, freeze your account. In case it involves the social media, reach out to the social media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, they all have the process for it. So reach out to them first stop the crime from taking place, because it can be an ongoing crime. So the first thing is stop it from taking place. The second is take all of these details and report it to the cyber cell. And along with the cyber cell, please ensure that you also report it in the local police station.
Following up that question, where do we get the cyber cell email or information from? Is it easily available online?
It is. If you look up the government sites, there is the entire, so I think Uttarakhand would also have the .nic.in. These are government websites. And actually, it has been mandated by the government policy that all of this has to be available online. So you will get it pretty easily. It's just that, most government websites are obviously not as attractive as a Flipkart or an Amazon website. So we don't tend to go in there. So, even otherwise, you have the Cert, or you can also look up the cert.in website. If nothing else works, I think in today's day and age, every single district has a policy of ensuring that the district collector and the SP have a Twitter account. Tag them. That is the power of social media. Always use social media for your work in that sense. So I'd advise that if you look at all of these elements between the three, you will be able to get the email IDs of where your cyber cell is.
If anyone else has a question, please let us know in the chat box. I will follow this with another question, Talish.
Yeah.
The most important thing is the finance aspect of it. Is it easy to get consultancy over cybercrime, or is it a complicated process? Do all lawyers handle this, or there are specific lawyers that we need to consult?
I think most general corporate or criminal lawyers handle it, because it has just become so rampant in terms of a crime, right? At that point in time, I think it's fairly simple, because to us it is just another crime that has taken place, and therefore we sort of are very used to the fact that this is taking place. But at the same time, what we would definitely say is that and this I can tell you, I must be candid here. So I was trying to track actually this morning when I was looking at my notes. I said, let me try and track whether the criminal who put up the cyber criminal who put up the Statue of Unity for sale has been caught, right? No. I mean, just think about it. Somebody went to OLX and said, this is for sale. And there are a whole bunch of people who sort of allowed it to happen as well, whether it's OLX as the intermediary and other things. So that person has not been caught, because that is the very nature of cybercrime. It's very easy to continue moving. It will seem like, at any point in time, I know that I can use a Tor system and my IP address will be shown somewhere in the Bahamas, whereas I'm speaking from Delhi. So, the nature of the internet is such that it makes it very easy to hide ourselves. On a day also, we realize that, right? Our filters are all there. Our photographs don't look like what we look like in real life. All of that is also there. So, as such, my first, advice to anybody, especially where, financial matters are concerned, is that please be secure, because it's very difficult to get that out. But having said that, where it involves companies, where it involves, entities that are there it is very easy to get stuff across. So, for example, even before Amazon came in, a lot of the times you will see that consumer, cases against these big aggregators have been very successful. If they've taken anybody for a ride, it's been very successful, especially in the tourism hospitality sector. You signed up for a villa somewhere up in Uttarakhand, you turned out it was a dharamshala, you're down there somewhere in the Tarai. You can actually go for them and you will get compensated for it. So there have been, in certain sectors, it's been very easy to move in that sense. But it is important to ensure that the person that you're dealing with, I think what you would look for in a lawyer is that they should know the internet. Because the internet itself is a completely different ball game altogether. and their languages are very different. You see, what we think of as normally as not being a crime, on the internet it can be a crime, right? So it's a fairly, and let me just give you as an example, right? Assuming I met you at an airport and I didn't want to tell you my name, I could have said my name is XYZ. You wouldn't be the better for it. We would part ways. However, if I do that over the internet, and I intend to do that, Komal, so to be able to take advantage of you, and there's fraud in my mind somewhere, I immediately get hit by the IT Act. So there is a lot of difference, because again, this is a medium where it is about facilitating a lot of things. So that's where the internet gets to be different. So my advice is that if you're going to a lawyer, be very certain that they know what the internet laws are about, because that is where you can get relief. The other area that we've seen a lot of relief in is cyberbullying and cyberstalking. That's something where a fair bit has been done. A lot of the times there's been very swift punishment that has come in. The other thing that we've seen is also where it works really well is wildlife crime, trafficking and other things. Those have actually moved to the internet altogether. And that is where the government has been, the cops have been very successful, the forest department has been very successful in being able to bring down that trade. So in certain areas it's successful, in certain areas it's not. So it's just a question of, knowing that the lawyer should know how to handle it.
We have one question from Rupa. She wants to know, what does one do when one loses a mobile or a laptop or an iPad in terms of the cyber security sense of protecting their data?
Yeah. Now, in terms of an iPhone or an iPad, I think Apple and I think even Android has this function where you can remote lock your devices. The moment you lose it, please just remote lock it. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to do. There is also a function that's there in most of these, or you can download an app that does it, that in case somebody tries to access it more than n number of times, then the data automatically gets deleted. That becomes a little more dangerous, because sometimes you may be prone to forgetting your own passcodes, and your data gets deleted. But otherwise, it's immediately a good idea. If you can't find your device, immediately remote lock it. And then try also, there is tracking that's available on most of these devices, because GPS is on, you can track where your device is. So that's also fairly easy if you have that tracking on from one device to another. Say suppose it's to your laptop and you have the tracking device that's there in all devices, you can take your phone and you can figure out where your laptop is. So it's just a question of getting to know the right apps about this, because apps are available for everything in today's day and age. So just check your local app store on your mobile, whether you're on the Android ecosystem or the Apple ecosystem or any other ecosystem that might be there, and check that, and you have those apps, and keep those apps always, because a lot of data is available, and this is precious. I mean, you can, when you lose a phone, it's not about the money that's there. Of course, high-end smartphones cost a lot of money, but more importantly, it's about all the stuff that I had in it, and what happens if somebody else accesses it. So that the remote locking can take care of.
Talish, would you like to wrap this up by telling us how important is it to report a cybercrime? Because a lot of people, like you said, sometimes these crimes don't get solved, or the miscreants don't get caught. How important is it for us to keep reporting what we go through?
I think it's like wearing the mask, right? It's not just about you. If you allow a cyber criminal to get away, then you know that they're going to be hitting out on other people as well. So it's also important for community to do that. So I think it's very important to keep in mind that you should at least report. And it's not, again, like I said, for financial and other matters, of course, they might be difficult to catch hold of the criminal who might be there. But for things like cyberbullying, for things like cyber stalking, for impersonation, data theft, it's actually very easy to be caught. It's really easy, because a lot of them are novices. So my advice is that please definitely do report them. And even if you're not reporting to the cops, you need to the service providers. So reach out to Twitter. If there's a troll, reach out to Twitter. If you have somebody on Instagram who has been direct messaging you stuff that you don't want to hear, let Instagram know that this person is a creep. Same for Facebook. Do that. right? You have somebody sending you over your Gmail account, you have been receiving these sort of lewd messages, turn around, report it to Gmail. They have very high standards that have been put in for them by governments all over the world. They have no choice but to do it. So use that. You have to enforce your right in that sense. And it's not just for you. Of course, you've gone through whatever you've gone through. But what about the rest of the people? It's also there because you're only going to encourage them to reach out. So my advisors always report because it helps build up that database there.
Now I would like to invite our Senior Vice Chairperson, Ms. Komal Batra, to say her vote of thanks.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you so much, Talish. This has been a brilliant seminar and interaction with you. And the fact that we must keep reporting these even as a social responsibility makes a lot of sense. Because suffering, I think, can be reduced only when we share each other's burdens. If I'm affected, I must save the other from getting affected. And thank you so much for all the details that you shared with us on how to log a complaint and all the other things. My dad switched on the phone television. I had to mute the call for a wee bit. Talish, from our side, from the team of Flow Uttarakhand and the members present, we would like to felicitate you with a token of gratitude. May I request the IT tune to present the memento on the screen for Ms. Talish?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kiranji, for having me, Gauri-ji, Komal-ji, and Trishula. It's always wonderful to see all of you. And hopefully in safer times we get to meet. But if any of you need anything, my email ID is there with Trishula. Please feel free to reach out to her. And if you're coming to Delhi, do drop by for a cup of coffee.
Talish, it has been really a very informative session and really enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
I would also request the IT team to present our memento for our day chair, Trishla Malik. Trishla is the chief coordinator of our legal consultancy and advocacy committee here. Thank you, Trishla, bringing Talish on board and choosing a topic of immense importance during the time of lockdown. Thank you so much. We look forward for a few more programs that are relevant with our businesses. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Kiran, ma'am.
Thank you so much.